Cartwright, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with my compliments to the chairman of the subcommittee, the gentleman from New Jersey, as well as the ranking member, the gentleman from Indiana, I rise today to offer a bipartisan amendment which would prohibit the Department of Defense from conducting new A-76 studies, a process, this A-76 process, that both the GAO and the Inspector General of the Department of Defense concluded could not demonstrate any savings to the taxpayer and which has been subject to a congressional moratorium since the year 2010. Specifically, the A-76 process uses faulty methodology, not updated since 2003, to determine whether federal civilian jobs should be outsourced. The DoD Inspector General's report noted it fails to keep track, this A-76 process does, fails to keep track of costs and savings. A-76, Mr. Chairman, is unmoored from fact, incorporating an arbitrary 12% overhead factor cost for federal employees as opposed to contractors. The Inspector General concluded that, quote, multi-million-dollar decisions are based in part on a factor not supported by data unless DoD develops a supportable rate or an alternative method to calculate a fair and reasonable rate. The results of future competitions will be questionable, unquote. Making decisions based on such a faulty process is an irresponsible use of taxpayer dollars. Maintaining the moratorium on the A-76 process is particularly important to the bipartisan House Depot, Arsenal, Ammunition Plant, and Industrial Base Caucus. Now, while statutory law currently shields the core work of depots from the A-76 process, this process could still subject a depot's non-core work to its flawed assumptions. Absent the protections of my amendment, significant depot workload, as well as arsenals, ammunition plants, and the rest of the organic industrial base operations will be open to these flawed A-76 studies and eventual outsourcing. This risks disruption, putting at risk the critical skills needed to support our warfighters, and interrupting workflow just military is in great flux. This kind of disruption could lead to significant delays in providing weapons and equipment to our warfighters, reducing readiness and weakening our organic industrial base, as well as reducing jobs in our local communities. This body, this House, owes a duty to our warfighters and the taxpayers. Allowing A-76 studies to move forward would be a breach of both. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment to maintain the moratorium on A-76 studies, shielding our military readiness from a process in desperate need of drastic revision. I'd like to thank Representative Don Beyer, as well as from across the aisle, Representatives Walter Jones and Rob Bishop, for their support on this important amendment. Additionally, I'd like to thank the American Federation of Government Employees for their support as well, especially the hard-working men and women of the Toby Hanna Army Depot in my own district. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I reserve the balance of my time. I yield to Mr. Bisklowski from Indiana.
I appreciate the gentleman offering his amendment. I believe it's a very good one and rise in support of it. Thank you very much for yielding.
Thank you. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves.